Imagine being forced to marry your stepbrother, only to be discarded, humiliated, and executed for being too loved by the people. Claudia Octavia, daughter of an emperor, should have lived a life of power and comfort. Instead, she became a symbol of innocence, destroyed by the cruelty of Nero. Her name has been buried under the infamy of her husband's crimes. But today, we uncover the dark truth behind the Empress Rome tried to forget. Before we dive in, just a quick ask. These videos take a lot of time, research, and care to create. If you're enjoying the journey through these forgotten corners of history, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. It doesn't cost you anything, but it means everything to the channel and helps keep these stories alive. Thank you so much. Born in 40 AD, Claudia Octavia was the daughter of Emperor Claudius and Valeria Messalina. Her childhood was marked by privilege but shadowed by danger. At a young age, her mother was executed for alleged treason, and Octavia found herself drawn into the web of palace politics. When Claudius remarried Agrippina the Younger, Octavia gained a stepbrother, Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus, later known as Nero. Claudius would adopt Nero and elevate him as his successor. To seal this political arrangement, Octavia was betrothed to Nero. She was no more than a pawn. At around 12 years old, Octavia was married to Nero, who was a few years older. The Roman people celebrated the union, seeing it as a continuation of imperial stability. But beneath the surface, there was no affection. Nero viewed her with indifference at best, and as his ambitions grew darker, so did his treatment of her. Still, Octavia was quiet, dutiful, and remained in the shadows. The people adored her for it. She became a tragic favorite, a reminder of what Rome once was. But for Nero, her popularity became a threat. He longed to rid himself of her and replace her with his mistress, Poppaea Sabina. And in doing so, he would cast aside any last shred of humanity he still held. The marriage between Octavia and Nero was a performance, one that quickly unraveled into tragedy. While Octavia remained loyal, Nero grew obsessed with Poppaea Sabina, a woman known for her beauty and cunning. Poppaea despised Octavia, not because of her personality, but because of her position. Octavia was still empress, and as long as she held that title, Poppaea's ambitions were limited. Nero began isolating Octavia. He publicly shamed her, accusing her of being barren, a cruel and calculated move. In Rome, a woman's worth was often judged by her ability to produce heirs, and Octavia had failed to give Nero a child. But the truth was far more complicated. Nero had little interest in her, and their relationship was distant, more political than personal. Still, he used this excuse to erode her image. When Poppaea became pregnant, Nero made his move. He divorced Octavia on the grounds of infertility and married Poppaea just days later. The Roman people were outraged. Octavia, quiet and obedient, had done nothing to deserve this disgrace. Crowds gathered, chanting her name, decorating statues of her with flowers, and demanding her return to the palace. Octavia had become more than an empress. She had become a symbol of justice. But Nero wasn't moved by public sentiment. He saw it as rebellion, and worse, he saw it as a threat. The love the people held for Octavia cast a long shadow over his new marriage. Poppaea, enraged by the public's reaction, pushed Nero further. She wanted Octavia gone, not just from the palace, but from the world. And Nero, increasingly detached from reality and intoxicated by power, was ready to oblige. The cries of the people didn't save her. In fact, they may have sealed her fate. When Nero heard the chants for Octavia echoing through Rome's streets, "Octavia is our true empress!" his paranoia erupted into fury. He had expected silence, not resistance. To him, Octavia was just a political inconvenience. But to the people, she had become a beacon of dignity in a corrupt empire. That terrified him. With Poppaea whispering poison in his ear, Nero escalated his campaign against Octavia. First, he banished her to Campania, a quiet exile meant to distance her from the public eye. but the backlash only grew louder. Desperate to justify harsher punishment, Nero accused Octavia of adultery, an accusation so flimsy that even the corrupt Roman elite balked at it. The alleged lover, a flute player named Eucharis, was tortured into confessing, though everyone knew the truth. It was a lie meant to destroy her. Still, Nero wasn't satisfied. A second, more insidious charge followed: sorcery, anything to cast her as dangerous, unclean, and deserving of death. Eventually, Nero ordered her execution, not through trial, but through convenience. Octavia, just 22, was forced to take her own life. When she hesitated, soldiers stepped in. Her head was severed and delivered to Poppaea as a twisted gift. The people of Rome were devastated. Even those loyal to Nero mourned. Statues of Octavia were desecrated, temples closed in protest. But there would be no justice. She had been a child when she was married, a girl when she was discarded, and a ghost when she was finally silenced. But history remembers her, not as Nero's empress, but as his victim. History often forgets women like Claudia Octavia, not because they were unimportant, but because they didn't fight with swords or rule with cruelty. She never led an army or built monuments to her name. Instead, her legacy was forged through silence, sorrow, and the unjust suffering she endured. In the years after her death, Rome changed. Poppaea, the woman for whom Nero sacrificed Octavia, met a grim fate of her own, allegedly kicked to death by Nero during pregnancy. Nero's reign spiraled into madness and violence until, eventually, he too was abandoned by the empire he had poisoned. He died alone, unloved and reviled. But Octavia, her memory endured. Writers and poets of later generations remembered her with tenderness. Plays were written in her name, most famously the tragic drama Octavia, attributed to Seneca, though likely written after his time. In that work, Octavia appears not as a voiceless victim, but as a symbol of lost virtue, standing in silent judgment over the depravity of Nero's court. Even the people of Rome, long after her execution, still whispered her name with regret. She became a martyr not for a cause, but for innocence itself. Octavia never sought power. She never sought revenge. She simply tried to survive in a world where survival was a threat to those in power. And for that, for her quiet strength, for her dignity and suffering, she is remembered. In the end, Claudia Octavia was more than just Nero's forgotten empress. She was proof that even in the darkest corners of history, there are still flickers of grace and stories that deserve to be told. And so ends the story of Claudia Octavia, a young empress sacrificed not for power, but for daring to exist in a world ruled by cruelty. If this story moved you, if you believe voices like hers deserve to be heard, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel continue producing these kinds of deep, difficult histories and keeps these forgotten stories alive. Thank you, and see you in the next episode of Dark Lore.